pretty good.
When we first got the services, Brady's sitting down there and it's like, she's like, this is taking forever. He had like 30 things open across his bar. I'm like, it's like, oh, I didn't know you could open the last one. So I'm just sitting there deleting them all going.
Yeah, because I needed this. Yeah, okay. You know them well. See?
Are you up and running, Jan?
Trying to rotate a financial report.
Oh, they don't rotate.
Yeah.
Do you want another? Sarah has another copy. Do you want one?
Got, oh, sure.
Okay.
That's good. Don't need to. It's just that one page.
Yeah.
All right.
All right. We will call the Cook County Public Health and Human Services Board July 17th, 2018 to order at 8:31 and a half. We will start with something fun on this agenda. We're going to start with new staff.
Awesome.
Well, I'm very happy to say that we are once again full staff, and I'm presenting to the board, Plum and Dimitrov.
Welcome.
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 Thank you. Good morning. My name is Plum Dimitrov, and I have worked for last 17 years at Wolfton Bay Family Neighborhoods, the last 3 of which as director of facilities. I have received a very warm welcome from the staff and a lot of the employees of the Cook County, and I'm looking forward to working with the team and all the staff to for many years to come. So thanks.
Thank you.
You're welcome.
I see that. You guys have big, huge smiles. That's really awesome. Kind of feels weird, like, oh, what's going on? Why are we all so happy? It's real. We are really happy. We're not faking it. So welcome.
It's nice to see you in a different role. Usually I see you running around with tools hanging off your belt and things that you were doing before, so
His new tools are pencils.
they're new tools or something different.
Computers.
Welcome.
All right, and we have one addition to the agenda. We're going to put under items for board action, Roger Linehan, and Allison will let us know what that is. That'll be C. Anyone else have any changes? Okay, can I get an approval of the consent agenda?
I move to approve the consent agenda.
Support.
Any opposition? All in favor?
Aye.
Like how I did that backwards? None of you are saying anything. Okay. Adult Protection Staff Report.
Hello,
Hello.
I'm Martina Williams, and this is Jean Munson, and we are the Adult Protection Team with Cook County Health and Human Services. And today we're going to be presenting on adult protection. I like to do this annually in July. This is when MARC rolled out several years ago, and MARC is the Minnesota Adult Abuse Reporting Center, and that's the 24/7 call center where reports regarding suspected adult maltreatment can be made. So I like to do this presentation in July just to update every year as to where things are at and just to give a refresher on adult protection services. And Jean started with us in October of last year, so she's quickly coming up on a year of being with Human Services, and we're really happy to have her. So the objectives today with this presentation, we're going to provide an overview of Minnesota Statute 626.557, which is reporting of maltreatment of vulnerable adults. Overview of Minnesota Adult Abuse Reporting Center, or MARC, and information on changes within the agency in regards to adult protection investigations, ongoing case management, and training. The Vulnerable Adult Act is what guides our work. In April 1980, Governor Al Key signed Minnesota Vulnerable Adult Act into law. So there's several components of this. There's the reporting of maltreatment of vulnerable adults. There's the multidisciplinary adult protection team, definitions, negligence actions, and administrative rules. The Department of Human Services, or DHS, rules govern the investigation and reporting of maltreatment of vulnerable adults and some aspects of the emergency and continuing protective social services required to be furnished by local social services agencies under the Vulnerable Adult Act. The legislature declares that the public policy of the state is to protect adults who, because of physical or mental disability or dependency on institutional services, are particularly vulnerable to maltreatment, to assist in providing safe environments for vulnerable adults, and to provide safe institutional or residential services, community-based services, or living environments for vulnerable adults who have been maltreated. In addition, it is the policy of this state to require the reporting of suspected maltreatment of vulnerable adults, to provide for the voluntary reporting of maltreatment of vulnerable adults, to require the investigation of the reports, and to provide protective and counseling services in appropriate cases. Did I miss a slide? I apologize. One of my slides is missing out here. Sorry. I wanted to show you some videos.
Yeah, it just needs to hook up the
Technical difficulties, sorry.
This is what I don't know. I don't know these things. TV.
Sorry about that.
That's okay, Sarah comes to my rescue a lot.
Thank you, Sarah. Okay. So we got a couple of videos here. I know I showed the first one last year, but we have some new people, so just wanted to make sure we all can see that.
Sometimes if you hit control and then click the link.
Thank you.
Now I need you to tell me again what happened. Sir? So what do you got? Someone came forward. Some doctors. Sorry. Come on.
Your grandma's gonna be all right.
This isn't okay.
All right, everybody. This section.
So technically not savvy. Okay. So this next one is a video out of Canada. The information at the and won't be applicable to us, but I think the examples are really powerful.
Well, you can. She's just not up to seeing visitors today or tomorrow. Well, it's just not possible. She's not seeing anybody, and she doesn't want to see anybody. No, not even you. You'll just have to wait until she feels better.
Ed, come here. I want that. Ed!
Now she's up again and calling me. I have to hang up. I'll call you soon when she feels better. Listen, Mom, you're just not in a position to have visitors right now. Maybe once you sign the documents, you'll feel better.
But I'm feeling fine.
Mom, we both know you'll feel better once you sign the house over to me. I just don't want you feeling overwhelmed with the burden of the house on your mind. All right. You might as well just go to your room then. Because we have nothing else to talk about until you sign. And you're not seeing any visitors until this is sorted out.
Oh, I hate these things.
Here, let me do it. What's your PIN number?
1970, your birth year. Hi, Gloria. Oh, hi, dear. How are you doing?
It's not working. We'll try again tomorrow.
But Mommy, I have money in your pocket.
Come on, I don't want to hear about money we don't have. Let's go. Come on, let's go.
Mary. Mary. Oh, I'm hungry. Are you on your way up to the store again?
Hey, guys.
Phil, you're back. How was school today?
Oh, there's no school today, Gramps. Just practice.
Okay, I am on my way out. Dad, you stay comfortable. I'll grab some food and bring it back later.
But Mary, I'm hungry now.
You'll be fine for a little bit, Dad. I'll hurry, okay? Can you put your grandpa a glass of water and take him back to his room? Here, Dad, make sure you take your pill today too, okay?
I thought I already did.
Nope, and you missed yesterday too, so just take a couple of extra.
What'd you say?
Nothing, Dad. Make sure you have a lie down. Okay, I'll see you guys when I get back.
Alright, come on, Gramps. Let's go. Alright. Almost there, Gramps. Almost there. Alright, and... Oh, yeah, there you go. There you go, Gramps. Let's go.
Wait, you're not gonna just leave him like that, are you?
He'll be fine.
I don't know, man. That just doesn't seem right.
He'll be fine. My mom gave me something that's gonna help him sleep for a while. Come on, we're gonna be late for practice.
You know what? I just remembered. I gotta go home first and get my cleats. So I'll just meet you there, okay? Okay, yeah. Yeah, I'll see you there. Okay.
There was some really strong examples of maltreatment of vulnerable adults in that video. The first video showed appeared to be a son who was possibly financially exploiting his mother or trying to. He was also appearing to be emotionally abusive towards her and isolating her from other family members. In the second snippet, there was a woman who appeared to be there with her daughter and granddaughter and financially exploited by her daughter. And in the third video, there was quite a lot going on. Appeared to be a caregiver neglect. If you noticed, he was living in a room that was torn apart. There was food all over the place, possibly, we don't know, rotting food or unsafe food for him to eat. He was hungry, and he was being over-medicated. So some pretty awful things there. We already went over the Vulnerable Adult Act and the reporting of maltreatment of vulnerable adults. So there's two types in the state of Minnesota. There's two categories or ways that vulnerable adults are defined. There's categorical vulnerable adult, which is any person age 18 years or older who is a resident or inpatient of a facility or receives services from a provider listed within the statute, and that would include foster care, assisted living services, or even someone who is receiving home care skilled nursing services is considered to be a categorical vulnerable adult. A functional vulnerable adult is any person 18 years of age or older, regardless of residence or whether any type of service is received, who possesses a physical or mental infirmity or other physical, mental, or emotional dysfunction that impairs the individual's ability to provide adequately for their own care without assistance, and this would include the ability to get food, shelter, clothing, health care, or supervision. And because of that dysfunction or infirmity and the need of care or services, the individual has an impaired ability to protect his or herself from maltreatment. So the Minnesota statutes defines three types of maltreatment: abuse, neglect, and financial exploitation. So abuse, emotional, physical, sexual, so causing or threatening physical pain or injury, causing or threatening mental pain, anguish, or distress with words or actions, and unwanted sexual contact of any kind, including forcing an elder to witness sexual behaviors. Neglect is defined as caregiver neglect or self-neglect. Refusal, which is the refusal or failure by those responsible to provide food, shelter, health care, or protection. And it might even be a person who's failing to meet their own needs, so they might need to take medicine 3 times a day, and they're not doing that repeatedly day after day. That could be considered self-neglect if those medications are imperative to their health. Or someone who is living in filth, who maybe isn't bathing. There could be concerns about skin breakdown and infection. Financial exploitation is defined as in a fiduciary relationship and not in a fiduciary relationship. So this would be improper taking, misuse, or concealment of funds, property, or assets. And the fiduciary relationship would be a power of attorney or someone who's joint on a bank account, a conservator for an individual, and then not in a fiduciary relationship, there wouldn't need to be any sort of tie there or responsibility, if I'm saying that correctly. So why does this happen? How do these things happen where there's daughters abusing mothers, or daughters abusing fathers, or sons abusing their mothers? Why does this happen? And there's some thoughts about different things that have an impact on making this sort of the perfect storm for happening. And sometimes cognitive impairments, so elders who struggle with memory, reasoning, or judgment are at greater risk for abuse, neglect, or exploitation because they may not realize they are being victimized or don't think anyone will believe them. Intimate partner violence. Elder abuse in couples may be intimate partner violence that has been ongoing for years. These are partnerships in which one person has traditionally tried to exert power and control over the other through emotional abuse, physical violence, and threats, isolation, and other tactics. So that behavior doesn't go away as people age. It continues, or can continue. Perpetrator characteristics and circumstances. Abusers are often dependent on their victims for financial assistance, housing, and other forms of support. The risk of elder abuse increases when the abuser has the opportunity and greater access to the elder's records and personal information. And this is especially true when the perpetrators have substance abuse issues, financial problems, or other personal crises. Isolation. Elders who are living alone are at higher risk because they may not want or be able to ask for help. But even elders living with others may become isolated when an abusive caregiver cuts them off from other people. And money and property. A lot of this comes down to money. I was at a training recently, and the facilitator continuously said over and over, it's all about the money. It's often about the money. Follow the money. Social Security, pension, savings, and property owned by the elderly make them a target for abuse, exploitation, and other financial crimes. So the Minnesota Adult Abuse Reporting Center was implemented throughout the state of Minnesota on July 1st, 2015. So now all adult maltreatment reports are made to a centralized call center that is staffed 24 hours a day, 7 days a week. The number is listed there, and mandated reporters can submit reports online. And a mandated reporter means a professional or professionals delegate while engaged in social services, law enforcement, education, the care of vulnerable adults, or any of the occupations referred to in this next section. And these people are required to make a report of maltreatment if they witness it or hear about it. So some other examples include nurses, chiropractors, home health providers, dentists, therapists, and pharmacists. And when a report is made, the identity of the reporter is considered confidential and may not be disclosed. It's very important to us that that identity is not disclosed because we want to ensure that people feel comfortable reporting, that they know that if they report, we're not going to tell the alleged victim or the alleged perpetrator, hey, it was your cousin who made this report. We want to ensure that people can feel comfortable making those reports and not be worried about the repercussions of doing so. There are some exceptions to this rule, and one would be if the alleged victim would like to know who reported and the reporter is okay with that information being released. Also, if there's a written finding by a court that the report was false and there's evidence that the report was made in bad faith, or during an appeal process or criminal proceedings. So once we receive an investigation, it comes into us here at Social Services through our system called SSIS. We get the report from Mark into our system. We have to check throughout the day for reports, and we have certain timelines that we have to meet. So within 24 hours, we need to start the investigation if the vulnerable adult is not in need of immediate care or protection but is allegedly abused. Within 72 hours, if the vulnerable adult is not in need of immediate care or protection but is not allegedly abused nor has allegedly been neglected, the investigation shall begin. Within 5 days, if the reporter asks for the initial disposition, we need to notify them whether or not we've screened the report in or out. And then within 60 days, we need to complete our investigation and provide a final disposition. There are several outcomes that can come from a report. So substantiated means that we find that there's a preponderance of evidence that an act of maltreatment occurred. False would mean that we have found there's no evidence that maltreatment has occurred. Inconclusive is less than a preponderance of evidence, I believe, which the preponderance of evidence is really, if you've got 3 people in a room, 2 of them have to believe that the abuse occurred in order for it to be a preponderance of evidence, I believe. So there's times where we just don't have enough, we believe that an act of maltreatment occurred, but we don't have enough evidence to prove that, and that might be a situation where we have an inconclusive finding. Sometimes we're not able to make a determination. The investigation is simply not possible, or the alleged vulnerable adult doesn't meet the category of being a vulnerable adult in the state of Minnesota, so they're not in an institution or receiving services, and they're not considered a functional vulnerable adult, then we wouldn't do an investigation. Sometimes investigations can result in criminal charges, reports being made to licensing or certification boards, and then our investigation may interface, our results of our investigation may interface with the Minnesota licensing agencies, which would be the Department of Human Services and Office of Health Facility Complaints. The outcomes that we often see in our county really is, it's more of an information and referral for us. A lot of times there is alleged maltreatment occurring that really is a result of maybe a caregiver being burnt out and not knowing the resources, or maybe an individual who is isolated and has lived that way for 50 years and likes living that way and doesn't want any services and has the capacity or mental cognition to be able to make a decision like that. To others, that person might be living in filth or might not be living the way that they would live, but to that person, that's the way they want to live. We see that occasionally. We use the opportunity to make referrals for resources. So maybe it's MinChoice's assessment to see if the person is eligible for help with paying for their services. It might be, sometimes it results in someone that maybe is self-neglecting and doesn't have the capacity to care for themselves and needs to go into a facility. Oftentimes we're coordinating between agencies, so law enforcement, home health, the clinic, the care center, we have the senior center, we have good coordination amongst all those agencies in trying to get people help. Might result in guardianship or conservatorship, and oftentimes it results in referrals for services. So we work closely with the sheriff's office. We also work with the attorney's office, our local financial institutions, and other community service providers. So the dilemmas that are faced by us and also other counties across Minnesota A person can choose to live in harm or even self-destructively, provided that he or she is competent to choose, does not harm others, and commits no crimes. Freedom is more important than safety. And in serving the adult client, the full range of social work skills must be used to assure the client is fully aware of alternatives, can make informed choices, and understands the consequences of those choices. And then with anything, resources available to us are limited here in Cook County. So sometimes we might have a individual who really needs to go into a facility, has this would be a situation like a person who's been living a certain way for so many years, and we get involved and we figure out that, hey, they have dementia, they aren't remembering to feed themselves, take their medications, bathe themselves. It's a dangerous situation. Sometimes the act of getting them into a safer place takes a lot of time and energy and efforts on our part to make that work. Because oftentimes people in that situation don't have family that's close by. They may have minimal friends. They may just be someone that came here to get away from everybody, and that's the way they've chosen to live for the majority of their life. And so helping a person in that situation get to a safer setting can be tricky. Any questions for us?
Go ahead, Jerry.
Martina, I am thinking about this MARC, Adult Abuse Reporting Center, and how that's working now that we're into it for 3 years. I guess my questions would be along the lines of how well do people know about MARC, and how frequently do they use it? And I could only imagine that some people must call you and your department directly anyway, and what happens in that case? And just overall, is this a good system now that we've had some time to experience it, as opposed to just local management of reports?
It definitely had some hiccups at first, but I think it's running pretty smoothly now. We find that we get the majority of our reports through MARC. We still have people that call our agency to make a report, and our intake worker, Heidi Akins, will either help the person get connected to MARC directly, or will give them the information so that they can make the call themselves. We're still finding that some mandated reporters want to go through us, and we just refer them back to the website, and we follow up to ensure that we get the report still, and we still get it. There's not a problem with reports falling through the cracks that way. I think it's a good system. I think it's been a good way for us to capture all of these reports that were coming, that I think were always there and were coming in, and we were responding to them in different ways and maybe not identifying them as a maltreatment report. And this way they all come in through the same channel, and they're all documented, and we can know what our numbers are. So I think it's been good.
Okay, good. I appreciate hearing that.
Carla?
I just wondered if I heard this correctly, that you're not getting substantiated reports similar to in the videos of people doing things to people in Cook County, but it's more lifestyle or dementia where they need some help with the dementia.
We are having some substantiated.
Okay.
We most often open up an investigation, and when we get a report, and some of those investigations result in a substantiation that maltreatment did occur. So we are still getting that, but I would say the majority of our reports really, it's kind of like an information and referral. It's kind of someone saying, this person, I'm concerned about them, and then we go out and we offer resources, and there's not a substantiated maltreatment. if that makes sense.
Right. Well, I'm also thinking along the lines of Jerry, looking at the videos, maybe I'm wrong, but I didn't know if that many citizens who had never been a mandated reporter or something would pick up the phone that readily upon hearing something like that, or if they wait a while, or, do you know what I mean?
Yeah.
Yeah, so we know about children, and I guess I'm always hoping gradually people will understand about the elderly because it's equally as vulnerable. Yeah.
Yeah, I think that's a good point that, like in that video, you're right. I don't know that people would pick up the phone and call that quickly. I think there's always a concern in a small community. If I report this, is someone gonna find out that it was me? Or, could I get in trouble somehow? There's just a lot of hesitancy, I think, so that's a good observation that I don't know that people are that informed as to the number to call, and so there's still education to do, you know, to help people learn about Mark and how they can make a report, and people can still call us and we'll
Right,
get them
right.
the information for Mark.
And they'd probably be more comfortable for a
Yes,
while.
yeah.
It's hard work,
Mm-hmm.
painful.
Ginny?
Could you refresh my memory on MARC? Is that an acronym or is that the name of a person?
It's an acronym. It's the Minnesota Adult Abuse Reporting Center.
And is that the number that you had listed?
Yes.
Okay, so there's a website and then a phone number.
Yes.
Okay.
And did you need that number again,
Mm-hmm.
or did you get it written down?
I didn't know.
Okay.
I'd like, give it to me again, I'd like to write it down.
Yeah.
I'm
Just trying to find it.
And speaking of that number, how would people learn about that number? Or what kind of education, you know, for the community, do we have about this issue?
So DHS has all kinds of printed materials that they have distributed to counties. We've got some posters up, I know, in our office. Every year we do a little snippet on the radio about Mark.
That's great.
And I think that DHS does also do some work with, like public radio to get the word out. So it's a hit or miss. I don't know how many people are aware of this option.
I think that's an interesting problem because,
Mm-hmm.
I mean, I remember hearing about this when it first started 3 years ago, and I know some things about this whole issue of vulnerable adult reporting. But to be honest, I've forgotten, or if I saw a situation, I don't know that I would respond by trying to get a hold of Mark.
Right.
Right.
I really don't.
Right.
What would it take to educate or really make
Right.
it that much more in the awareness of the public?
Right.
Yeah, when you Google it, you get Cook County Public Health and Human Services, and the number is listed on there, but it comes up as Cook County Public Health. But that number does come up to contact, but the first number you get on the webpage is Joni's.
Mm-hmm.
Okay.
Is that number 844?
Yes.
844
8
880 1574.
1574.
Mm-hmm.
I know the state does a big push every year around this time with advertisements and getting the word out, but you're right. So it still should be known that you can call our office, you can call law enforcement, and they or we will get you to the right place, the right number.
Could you call 911 and readily get this number?
Mm-hmm.
Because 911 is a number everybody knows.
If it were warranted, you should.
Yeah.
If not, then people should call the 3030 number or Health and Human Services.
Should is the operative word.
I think the message might be easier to try to
Yeah.
recognize all the
Yeah.
different possible reporting things. The message
Yeah.
for us locally might be easier to contact the county authority, the Brant County
Yeah,
Authority.
no, I can see doing that but a person who's experiencing something that feels like an emergency to them.
Then absolutely.
Yeah.
If it feels like an
Yeah.
emergency to somebody, they should
Yeah.
always feel like they can call 911.
Yeah, because that seems like the universal language for,
I just wanted to say you have a real plus in a small town with your financial institutions, because they know everyone's pattern. And I have seen, not here, but elsewhere, where that transactions financially, if a child was on the account and a caregiver was exploiting that the adult child got a call, why would a 93-year-old woman be buying a racing car or something, So I'm just saying, I think since they know your patterns.
our credit card companies are doing that for us too.
That's my goal when I'm 93.
Well, I mean, they pick up on a change in how you typically spend your money, right?
And they're also
I
really
like-
nice to work with. It's nice to have
Yes.
a personal contact at each institution.
Right.
Because when we find we have to go out of the county, we're not sure where to send the request, and it just takes so much longer than when we call one of our local people and they
Right.
trust that we have the right to that information, that we're investigating something, and they respond very quickly.
Mhm.
Do the banks have any type of mandatory reporting if they see odd behavior? Do they just call law enforcement?
I don't know, they're confidentiality. Yeah. I'm not sure if they have. That's a
Along
good
the lines of what
question.
Carla was thinking, if they see
Yeah.
a Maserati come up on a,
Large sums that they're required, like larger transactions that they would be required to report. But I don't know if you're under that.
I don't believe people who are securities licensed have a duty to report large transactions, which I think is what Jeannie was just saying, but I don't think that activity, an increase in activity on a regular account is gonna trigger anything. I think only securities licensed people have a duty to report, and it's a large sum of money. I think it's $10,000 or something when you get to that point that they have to investigate or document.
But maybe some education could be done with the banking community,
Right.
and then it's up to them if they wanna
Yeah.
do anything.
Myron?
Question, maybe on frequency or number in any given year of reports, and then, what ends up being investigations. Have you got any data that you kept on that, or just starting to?
I do have some data just on annually since 2013. So Mark rolled out in 2015. In 2013, there were only 10 reports of maltreatment. In 2014, there were 15. In 2015, we received 23. In 2016, we received 40. 2017, 38. And we've received 17 reports to date in 2018. And I don't have a breakdown of how many of those were screened in or substantiated versus false.
Okay.
That's good.
Thank you.
Appreciate that.
Any other questions? Thank you.
Thank you
Thank
so
you.
much.
It's hard to say thank you to that report, because that wasn't a pleasant report.
Thanks for your work.
Yes,
Yeah,
thanks for your
very
work. It's hard and complicated.
Ellison?
Just to echo the thanks to Martina and Jean for your presentation and for the work that you do every day. I don't know about you guys, but I could listen to Martina talk all day. She's just so calm and professional and knowledgeable. But I think there are really good points being brought up about opportunity for outreach in the community, and perhaps we could work with Valerie to draft a media release that could go to the paper, and Martina and Jean will likely be on the radio for a monthly WTIP spot to promote this resource as well. So thank you for that.
Thank you.
So I'll start as always with the most important part of our department, our staff, with a staff update. Again, we're really happy to welcome Plum to the department. With Plum coming into this position, we are fully staffed, as Lori said.
You look really nervous to say that.
Hold up your
It's
shoes.
really exciting.
Hold up both your shoes.
With the exception of public health, of course, which
right.
has been short-staffed for some time now. And we do have the anticipated vacancy this fall in adult services. We're actively recruiting for that position. We have some interviews set up, but that position will remain open until filled. So we'll continue to accept applications until we have a name to present to the board for hire. And again, that's an adult services position, so anyone who's interested in applying, working with adults, it wouldn't be doing adult protection, but would be an important part of that core team in providing services to adults in the community. Few agency updates to share this morning. Our community health assessment stakeholder group continues to meet. We're working on identifying our next meeting date sometime in early August. This is just a really engaged group of people that are doing the work to look at community health data, telling the stories of community health and wellness, and really partnering with our agency and leadership within the community and community health board to develop some public health strategies. So any of those who have been invited to be a part of this group but haven't been able to join, it isn't too late. We'll get you caught up and happy to have as many voices at the table as possible during this process. If you want to be a part of this process, contact me if you want more information. We're happy to share and have lots of voices at the table. We're continuing to meet with the Sawtooth Mountain Clinic to discuss the transition of the Universal Family Home Visiting Program. Hope to have a recommendation for this board as a part of our 2019 budget. But in the interim, we're moving forward in budget planning for either alternative, either filling that vacancy internally or developing a contract with the clinic for those home visiting services to moms and babies. Our community grant application process is underway. The application and letter went out at the end of June to all of those who received funding in 2018. There was a public notice in the newspaper and on the county website. The deadline to apply is July 31st. Our next steps will be to meet with the work group committee, which is made up of representatives of our Public Health and Human Services Advisory Committee. That work group will be reviewing the applications. And again, the goal of this process is really to leverage our county funds in partnership with other groups in the community that are helping to support our mission. I think Martina gave some great examples today of how isolation can really contribute to situations where people might be more likely to be maltreated or unhealthy. And a lot of these groups that we're working with through this process really support the community with socialization and supports in the community that promote wellness. So we're excited about this process going forward. It's new, but again, it's a way to really leverage county dollars working with other groups in investing in preventative programs that support the community. Our emergency preparedness management team within Public Health and Human Services we'll be doing some training with the Emergency Preparedness Committee next month. Our management team has been going through the online training for Incident Command 700, and we'll be taking the Incident Command 200 with the Emergency Preparedness Committee. We're continuing to review plans, make sure everyone understands their roles and responsibilities, and educating the staff on our role within emergency preparedness as well. I shared an attachment, or Sarah, I believe, distributed a summary from the Human Services Director Professional Association, MAXA, with a summary of the 2018 legislative session. I'm sorry I did not get that out in the packet ahead of time. But everyone should have copies, and I'll make sure that's posted with the minutes as well. I'm not going to spend a lot of time reviewing it, as I'm sure you all know not a lot happened in this legislative session. But I think this is a nice summary of things that will likely still be on our radar in terms of human services priorities going into the next session. One of the successes of this session was the approval of funds to establish regional behavioral health crisis centers. Commissioner Sievertson has reported on this through her involvement on the Arrowhead Health Alliance Board. And again, this is just one piece of the puzzle in looking at the continuum of care for behavioral health needs across the state. Lastly, I'll just ask if there are any questions about any of the board action items today, or any of the information that I shared, or anything that I can bring to future meetings if that's of interest to this group.
Any questions? Okay. We'll move into board action items.
Oh, if I may, just share that the item that I'm requesting to add for board action this morning is the, to approve the reappointment of Roger Linehan to the Public Health and Human Services Advisory Committee as a citizen member. Previously, he was representing Grand Portage Human Services. I was able to reach out to him. As you know, he retired at the end of May. And he is still interested in serving on this committee, and we're grateful to have him continue to serve on the committee as a citizen representative. It wasn't addressed in our bylaws, but I spoke with the chairs of the committee, and we were all in agreement that there wouldn't be a need to have him reapply since he was actively serving on the committee. So we'll be just requesting to approve the reappointment as a community member on this committee.
You really didn't give him an opportunity to retire, did you? That's how we do it, you know. We let them retire, then we rehire them as consultants. Okay, does
Volunteer
anyone have any
consultants.
questions on the items for board action before we take action? Can approve them individually or as a whole?
As a whole is fine.
Would you like to make that motion?
Make a motion to support the 3 items in A and B.
Can I get is that a second, Myra?
Yes.
Okay.
With C.
And Jerry, you had a
Could
question?
I ask a question about the contract with General Security Services Corporation? Is this something new that we're doing now?
It is new. So this is an organization that has an office in Duluth. It's a transportation provider, secure transportation provider. We're entering into this agreement at the request of the Children's Services team, social services team that was interested in having an additional option for transporting individuals who need secure transport if law enforcement or agency social worker isn't a viable option. And for example, if someone's in a child in foster care placement out of the county needs to be transported home and needs a secure transport, this would be an option for that.
And the rates are pretty reasonable. A scheduled transport is $21.95 an hour, non-scheduled $25.45 an hour, and mileage fee 59 cents.
It can be a really cost-effective option for us versus having someone travel from Cook County to the
Both ways.
placement and back.
Yeah.
Having them more centrally located.
And depending who it is, if it's law enforcement, then they're in a squad car, and then most likely overtime, so.
Would this be used to transport, say, a person with mental health crisis to Duluth for services or something like that, or not?
Potentially, I think that could be an option. Again, this is just an additional option for the agency when we're looking at transportation
Yeah,
needs.
but the sheriff is another option, or an ambulance is an option, depending on the situation.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Any other questions? All in favor?
Aye.
Any opposed? Motion's pass. Anything else, Allison? Okay, we will move into committee reports. Arrowhead Economic Opportunity Agency, Myron.
Okay, well, I went to the last month meeting in Evelyn, and we had it was also, we had a board meeting afterwards, but during that day, I can't remember what they call it, it's a fair, where they set up all the services that are provided by this agency, all these agencies under the umbrella of AEOA, and it was quite impressive. I couldn't believe, must have been about 70, 80 tables set up, and I'm always amazed at the services that are provided, excuse me, allergies. I know that I think, we have a budget of over 40 million as an agent with all these things from Head Start to thing for seniors, and it does a lot of work, and we have also services here that are provided to us in Cook County. So, I guess that's all I have to say, that we do benefit a lot from this, and it's worthwhile to be involved.
Excellent. Arrowhead Health Alliance Joint Powers, Jan.
Thank you, Madam Chair. They did not meet.
Arrowhead Regional Corrections. Robbie.
We meet on Friday.
Community Health Board, we have not met yet. Well, I shouldn't say yet for this month. Public Health and Human Service Advisory Committee.
Yes, we did meet, and Carl and I will share a report from our July 3rd meeting. One of the new additions to our agenda in that meeting is this round table, and it's always interesting to see what comes up in that. And one topic that appeared from about 3 different places was this whole idea of people getting to Duluth for medical treatment and the cost, dealing with the cost of that, and people who can't afford that. And it just seems like an issue that's got some energy right now. And I know at the North Shore Healthcare Foundation, we're thinking about that too, is this an area that, working with other partners in the community, something could be done to increase the ability, or the availability of financial resources, or ability for people to get to Duluth for treatment, or perhaps even stay overnight if they have to be there for treatment. So that's just out there as an issue with some more attention these days. Rita at the clinic told us about their giving tree, which is kind of cool, because it started out as a Christmas thing where people were encouraged to contribute some money, and they would buy like cards for gas, for travel, or food supplement, or a number of things. And that seems to have grown such that I think it's out in the lobby now, from what I heard, and that it's more and more people know about it and contribute, such that if a patient at the clinic has some need that isn't going to be met elsewhere, a doctor or a nurse could come in and just take one of these cash cards, or a gas card, or a food card, or whatever, and give it to them. It's really kind of a heartening thing to see that where the system might have gaps, there's this generous way that seems to be emerging to meet some of those needs. Rita also talked about working on responding to a federal RFP for integrating mental health services into a clinical medical setting. They've done this, of course, for a few years now with the people that they've hired to operate within the clinic and be a referral for mental health kinds of issues. But there's apparently some federal money, and she was working quite feverishly to get a grant proposal together to respond to that. So it seems like a trend that's been building. Another one that came out, Wendy Hansen told us about a course coming up in January at North House on building small houses, which fits some of this issue that we've seen emerging about providing inexpensive and affordable housing for people.
Is that the tiny house movement?
Yeah, I think, right,
Okay.
that's it.
Okay. On wheels.
Could be.
Yep. Okay, so that's mine.
All right. Oh, you didn't do the North. You presented on, or they know?
Yeah, well,
Okay.
we presented, we meaning Inger Andrus and I and Carl Hansen were at the meeting and presented to the advisory committee our update on the strategic planning process that North Shore Healthcare Foundation has recently been through. Some of you have heard it in other places, and Allison's heard it 3 times now.
Okay.
Is that enough, Allison, or?
Every time I get something new, and it's just, it fits so well with the work that we're doing in our agency and through the community grants and community health assessment, so it's, I get value out of it.
Good, thank you. Yeah, it seemed like the committee was interested and receptive, yeah.
Okay, one thing that came up in the meeting was that Early Childhood Committee has reconvened. And you remember them and the work they did, and so they're focusing on looking at daycare issues again, and I guess Allison had said 3 homes had closed for daycare. And so the agency is going to have a session or an open house to have potential providers come and talk about that, and maybe have some current providers there to tell them what it's like. Allison Plummer gave an excellent presentation on healthcare access outreach that the agency's been doing regarding services and financial assistance. And it was an eye-opener to me that only 10% of the people eligible for financial assistance use it. And so what they're piloting is an outreach program to pre- and postpartum mothers. And I didn't realize until I learned this that the federal government is more generous in their funding to pregnant women than in some other programs. So you may be eligible to receive medical assistance even though you have private insurance. And the sliding scale is much higher for receiving that than in other assistance programs. So one of the things they're doing to make sure people know about it is they've sent out a letter to all the women that are pregnant, congratulating them on this and letting them know about some things. And another letter has gone out about the way you can use services financially that you could get, or transportation, or all the things that you talk about. There are the shortfalls in receiving medical help in Duluth if you're low income. And of course, it's contingent, like the other programs, on a local physician's documenting and referral that this is necessary. But I think this is great because now that gets the word out more on one program, and you'll see how that goes. But it was a surprise. I wouldn't have thought to apply for it. Okay, and again, there was a lot of discussion around the transportation issue and other issues that would be done in the community health assessment.
Great.
And that's it from the
Thank you.
energetic group.
Healthcare Planning Committee, Ginny.
Well, we did meet, and there was a lot of chatter about some good things happening. Kay from Care Partners is developing a little library for folks to check out books in regards to dementia. Yeah, if you're a caregiver, if you need some resources, she's starting that library. And she's reaching out eventually in the Homeland area to bring some programs up there. And in August, there'll be an ice cream social, which they've had before, and that's always a good way to get together to learn more about the Care Partners.
Where's the social at?
She didn't have a place right then.
It's Sydney's.
Sydney's usually.
So.
Okay.
The custard place. Jody talked about doing a little program that is called Fearless Females, and it's for young people, gals from about 14 to 18 years of age, and she has it there at the office, and working with young people to have more confidence in themselves, or if they have things they want to discuss. So that will be starting. Kimber talked about 3 seats open for the hospital board, District 1, 3, and 5. And Rita reported that they have a new board member on the clinic, and that's Patrick Knight. We know Patrick. So that's all I have to report.
Okay. North Shore Collaborative, Jan.
Thank you, Madam Chair, and they did not meet.
Emergency Preparedness, Ginny and Myron.
We're meeting next Tuesday, and we're going through the training for incident command system.
Excellent. Would anyone like to make a motion to adjourn?
So move.
Second.
All right, all in favor?
Aye.
Excellent.
Thank you. Thanks.
Would you have a couple of minutes to help me with the
Okay.
phone?
Sure.
I screwed it up, and I wanted to call my husband. I couldn't. I
Yeah.
couldn't